Hi, welcome to the Gamesplainer. I'm Jeff the Gamesplainer, and today I'm gamesplaining Ragusa. Ragusa is a 1 to 5 player game put out by Capstone Games. It is a really wonderful little game. I really enjoyed playing this one. What's happening is it's action selections, or you're putting a little house onto the board, and you are actioning all three of the things that intersect at that point where you put the house. So you could put it into the country and up the amount of resource that you're able to create, or you can put it into the city and do the thing that is attached to the house on each of the sides. If you're not able to do one of the things, then you can't put your house there. You have to be able to actually do all the stuff. There's some funky little things in the rules, like you can only build in the city 2 things around a hex if you are creating 2 stone in the country. So it kind of forces you to go and create goods to be able to then use them. You can only create as many oil as you have olive groves in the country. And that's according to how many houses you have around the hex. Now, the beautiful part of the game is that when I place something in the city to action one of the hexes, everyone else who is also around that hex will get to action the thing numerous times. And so what that means is that if I have actioned it once, I've left my house, there's someone else, the next player comes along and actions that, I get to action again. There's a really funky build up on that and the ability to get points. One of the areas of the city that I noticed is the fishmonger. And you've got to be really careful with this, because when you just look at the board and look at the game, it looks like one of those things like, oh, I'll just get a couple of points. Oh, I'll go there and just get a couple of points. But if you watch my playthrough, you'll notice there's a jump of, at the end of the playthrough, I'm jumping from about halfway through the game to the end of the game to give an idea of how the point scores actually happen. But one of the players has jumped horrendously forward, and it's because they were playing in the fishmonger. When you play your first one, you're only going to get like 2 points or so, 1 point even, because you're getting 1 point for every fish that you produce. But if you go to the fishmonger again, each of your houses is scoring 1 point per 2 fish that you produce. And so upping the amount of fish you produce, as well as going to the fishmonger with multiple guys, means that you're going to get multiple points, which really enables you to push forward on as a hex that I would naturally look at and go, oh, I don't really want to do that. It feels like some easy points if you're able to get the multipliers. If you're the only one going after it, you're going to get a heap of points. If someone else goes to it, you get that heap of point again. So going to these spots early is actually a really good thing. You are creating things in the country, so grapes or olives or iron ore, I believe it is. There are 3 hexes in the city that turn those 3 things into their product, so oil or wine or silver. And the price of them changes depending on the ships coming in. There's cards that tell you to up or down they tell you how far to up the price of that particular good. When you purchase stuff off the ships, you are purchasing using your goods, and you'll get as many points as where the market is at that point. But when you purchase the good, the cost of that resource that you've used is reduced. And so there's a real funky little marketing idea on that, where you could end up with heaps of silver, but silver's not really worth much, so it's not really as valuable to you to continue after that. Keeping all that in mind and the little finickiness on it can be a real catch-out point on this game. There is a couple of things that are finicky, and I'm going to say that they are finicky. And they're necessary finicky, but they're finicky. So this costing thing, there's a few things that have to move around whenever you do a harbour purchase. There is also a element of, if you build a house in the country, you have to have enough wood production to add a house to a hex. So if you build 1 house on 1 hex, you have to be producing wood. Fortunately, you can use the wood that you're producing with the laying down of that house to build that house. That's fine. But if you then want to add a second one in, you have to have 2 wood production to be able to access that hex again. Similar thing with going into the city. You have to have stone production to be able to build one thing around a hex in the city. If you want to build a second thing around a hex, you're going to have 2. And so you get to the point in the game where you've got a few things out in the country to give you the building capacity, but then I want to put it here, but if I put it here, that's going to give me my third house on that hex. I can only produce 2 stone, so therefore I can't. Keeping your head on that as you're playing is really important, because it's in one of the games I played, we both missed it a couple of times. That, oh no, you need to have 3 things produced to be able to build that building there. You only have 2. We fixed it up by just the next turn they had to go up and actually produce the stone. But that's not how the game should be played. It should be, you've produced the stone, okay, I've got this stone, I can now use it. And I think that's the downfall of using a card system saying this is how many of this production thing that I'm producing. I don't see another way around it. We could take the goods, but then it would have a different balance on when you are able to purchase stuff and how much you have to use to purchase stuff. Of course, there are turns where you're not going to use all that stuff. It's a mechanism very similar to Seven Wonders, where you're looking at what your city produces. If you produce enough, then you can build the thing that uses that stuff. Similar idea, but because it's just there, it's very easily forgotten. And so you've just got to keep your head on that and keep, every time you want to build something, just double check, how much stone am I producing? How much wood am I producing? If you're building a building between both country and city, you need to actually produce both a wood and a stone for each of the ones, or the amount of wood and the amount of stone necessary to build on those hexes. Other than these things, there's this whole idea of a wall that is built around the city, and there's a spot that you go to build the wall. At the end of the game, you're going to get points for the longest wall section that is uninterrupted, that has your color. So if there's a gap where there's no building, that wall still counts towards you, assuming that's on your wall part. But there's also these little arches that go over the top of the houses, so 2 people can claim one spot, so it's not totally broken up. I really like that. I really like that mechanism, that way of playing. It's suddenly kind of, it doesn't matter so much if someone claims that, I can put a thing over the top. But you've got to remember to put the thing over the top. Because what happens is someone else might put the thing over the top and suddenly you are stuck and you're not able to get any further with that particular wall. So there's a whole wall aspect, and the building the wall and putting the arches on, they're at opposite ends. Once again, if you build the first piece of wall, you put one down, you're going to get a point for the wall building, you're going to get a point for each of your structures, so house or the arch that's next to where that wall is built. That's good. You can get a possible 3 points out of doing that. But the next person who builds a wall, you're then going to be able to build again. And this is that whole concept of, I put a thing here, I'm getting a little thing, but by the end of the game, you're going to be doing a whole bunch of stuff, potentially 2-3 pieces, depending on how many houses you have surrounding that particular hex. There's a couple of hexes that you need to kind of be aware of. One is the sale hex. So what they're looking at is you're selling one of the goods that you've produced for the cost of what it is up in the top of the board. So it might be 2 points. So you remove one of the items and push yourself forward 2 points. If you have a second house there, you can do 2, 3, etc. See, this build up is really important. There are some end game points as well, some end game cards that kind of push you in a certain direction. So some of them will give you points for a particular product coming off the boats and pushes you towards, oh, that's available, I'd better go and work out a way to get that. Some are going to give you points at the end of the game for building up grapes or olives, or the number of wall sections that are next to yours. All these things, they push you in certain directions in the game. And I think these cards are actually a really good thing to be in this game. It's a really good thing to kind of draw you out of the way you play, because there are multiple paths to victory. And this is really what this game comes down to. There are multiple paths to victory. Not a single one of them is necessarily going to win all the time. But having cards that push you towards a certain aspect and doing that one thing is a worthwhile thing. bearing in mind there's a maximum of 12 points off each card. So if you go after something and you get up to 14, 15 points, you're still only going to get 12 points from it. So keeping an eye on that as how much stuff, how many points am I possibly going to get from this, is a really worthwhile thing to do as well. Let me say, the production on this game is really good. I really appreciate these boxes for each player that have all the bits necessary. Because what happens, they just really easily sit in the box. They come out depending on how many players you've got and then what colours they're using. Pull them out. This is the board. I might say this is a double-sided board that is supposed to be lighter on one side, darker on the other. I can't really see much of a difference between the sides. So just a heads up on that. But I can see enough when playing the game on either side. I don't even know what sides I'm on anymore. I can see enough of the game for it not to be a problem. But putting that board and the rules on top, suddenly this can sit this way and we're not going to drop any parts out of the box. I really like that design. That's a really easy design to make happen, to manipulate, and to allow that to be in the box, because suddenly it fixes all those problems of plastic pressing stuff, or do I leave it open with just these little bits. That's a really quick, really easy way to build it up and to put the game out and to pack it back away as well. Really quick, without the necessity to actually purchase any other in-box stuff. So look, I've really appreciated Ragusa. I really like it. I want to play it more often. But there it is. We'll see what happens by the end of the year if this one manages to get onto the top 10 list. I think it should. It's just a matter of if I manage to get it to the table again a few times to really get crunchy on it. I'll leave there. If you have any comments or suggestions, please write them below. Please go ahead and watch my Gamesplay and Gamesplanation to get a feel for how the game actually plays. If you have any games that you wish to be gamesplayed, please shoot me an email to thegamesplainer@gmail.com. Follow me on Instagram and Twitter @thegamesplainer to keep up to date with the games that I'm playing. Subscribe to my videos to keep up to date with the games that I'm gamesplaining. And until next time, enjoy gaming.